of that storm, you see. The nightmare got even darker. To see someone appear out of seemingly nowhere, assuming that it's a ghost, and that's as good a guess as any. When they couldn't feel any more fear, they get terror ratcheted up a notch. And through the wind and waves, the cries of terror and the creaking boat, Jesus speaks, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." And in case we missed any of the other, not the details particularly make the message, but this would be the significant point. Not that we have a God that could control the waves later or just walk on water, but make sure we hear this. Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid. Jesus' words in Greek are essentially, I am. I am here. And like the echo in terms of all of the language of the Hebrew Yahweh, the great I am, the Yahweh that spoke to Moses out of the burning bush, I am who I am. The God who was worshipped in such a way that the Hebrews could not even write the full name, YHWH. They just put the initials because we're talking the Holy One. The I am the Good Shepherd, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life, I am the living water. So when Jesus says to them, I am, I think we could anticipate that within Jesus' teaching and reaching to his disciples, that would be the voice that would bring them through that fear, through that peril and terror. Have courage, I am here. The great I am. In the midst of the winds and the waves and the sweat and the fear, Jesus says, I am. These two words identify Jesus as the one who spoke from the burning bush. The one who created all things, including the winds, the waves, and the sea itself. In the midst of the storm, Jesus says, I am. And for the Israelites, who were the people of the desert, the sea was often more than a body of just water. It was a symbol of chaos, of things you couldn't trust. Even the sand you see as a desert and wilderness wandering in a place of testing, you could more so trust it because you had feet on solid ground, but here in the water, it's a place of fear for me. My mother never liked to be in water above her ankles. She ran a low tub, you see. She's afraid of drowning, you see. So when we went water skiing or canoeing, she was, you know, at the time she was almost like white-knuckled prayer, thinking about us canoeing, because she hated it. My wife was on the church show this weekend with one of her nursing partners. But in the midst of this water, you see, God is in control. And so the Israelites as well, for this Galilean Sea, was a place of mystery as well. So for them to hear when the writers of the Hebrew Scriptures now declare the power of God is pointing to the fact that God created the sea and he could tame it with his word. The Lord reigns, he is robed in majesty, as the psalmist declares, the robe in majesty and his arm with strength. The world is firmly established, it cannot be moved. As the psalmist echoes, your throne is established long ago, and from all eternity you are God. The seas have lifted up, O Lord, the seas have lifted up their voice, the seas have lifted the pounding waves. And from Psalm 93, the echo, mighty is the thunder of the great waters, mightier than the breakers of the sea. The Lord on high is mighty. The Hebrews understood that God had power, even over a tumultuous and tempestuous sea. Jeremiah asked the question, perhaps redundant, but a teaching lesson too. Who then shall we fear? Should you not tremble only in the fear of God's presence? I have made a boundary to the sea, everlasting barrier. It will not cross. The sea is contained. The waves may roll, but they cannot prevail. They may roar, but they cannot overcome my word. Jeremiah 5:22. So the Hebrews had a long understanding that God controlled the waves. The one who walks in the water is the one who made the water, the one who gave it the boundaries, the one who sits enthroned above it all. And so for the Hebrews to hear this message, the people of Jewish ancestry, that here was the person who walked in the water. Not surprising that he could with his voice simply say, be still. So this is the one who comes in the midst of the storm and says, I am. Take courage. Don't be So often we may read the story and focus on Peter's water walking adventures, and there's many jokes about Jesus walking on the water. Bible commentaries love to expound on the idea that Peter began to sink because he took his eyes off Jesus and focused on the wind and the waves. John Ortberg, a famous pastor who wrote the wonderful book entitled, "If You Want to Walk on Water, You Have to Get Out of the Boat." Some of you perhaps have read that, but the point is not to just teach us how to do miraculous things, but to keep our eyes on Jesus. And John underlines as well, the greater things will you do than I will do, Jesus says to his disciples. But walking on water is not the point. The point is to keep our eyes on Jesus. And to be known as people who've been given the gift of faith. The point of the story is to see Jesus' identity as the God of all creation and the God who rules our heart. And no matter if our hearts have up and downs, which they do, the trepidation of life, and all our fears and fantasies that are met or not met, Jesus says, I am. Peace be with you. If this passage calls us to do anything, it is not to try to walk on water. This passage calls us in verse 33, with the concluding of the story. I want to do this first. Like a wedding, do the vows right away. Do the important thing. Truly, you are the Son of God. Worship. That was the response of the disciples, to come to worship. If you are here this day, and on those days as you travel and are out in God's creation and visiting many places, which is our privilege over the summer, where we find ways to worship Him in the splendor, certainly, of creation, but always in the wonder and the certainty of His Word. The Reverend Barbara Brown Taylor, who is an Episcopalian priest, put it this way: if there is a miracle that's worth holding on to in the story, certainly Jesus walked on the water, but that's not the main point. If Jesus has the ability to walk on water, it's not surprising that He has the ability to walk up a flight of stairs and gives us the same ability. But the miracle is not that Peter managed to get out of the boat for those moments that he walked. But the miracle is that Peter obeyed. When Jesus said, come, he came. And the miracle is that even a soggy, a chagrined Peter, who had to sputter seaweed out of his lungs as the boat continued to bob in the dead of the rather dark night, somehow in the midst of these humble surroundings, way out in the middle of nowhere, the disciples came to realize that it's nothing less than the Son of God who is walking with them towards Him and is now sitting right in front of them in the boat. They worshipped, they believed. May that be our heritage and our legacy and our perspective as we leave this day. The point of the story is to believe. And that's a gift you've been given. We can't recreate that. We can't pull ourselves up in bootstraps. See, somehow I want to believe stronger. But the inkling that God is with us. In Jesus, the Son of God, has come to not just rescue the disciples, but to rescue and to be our Lord and our Savior. Maybe you've wondered why Jesus walked on the water in the first place. It became the subject, if you remember Jesus Christ Superstar, King Herod making jokes about it, turn that water into wine, all of that language, walk across my swimming pool, prove to me that you're no fool, all of that sometimes derision that the person of Jesus has taken because of this simple miracle, simple for Him. Jesus walked on the water to show us that the very things we fear are often merely a sidewalk that Jesus too uses to walk into our lives. Those things in which we fear and have anxieties, Jesus uses that as an entry point to come into our lives. Jesus walked on the water to show us the very things that give us most despair. Jesus would turn around and give us faith. If you're like me, you maybe pray that God would save you from the storms of life. And I don't plan on stop praying about those things. Those storms of anxieties, those storms of, be it health or finances or relationships, we'd like to be free from those storms. But maybe the better prayer is that in the midst of storms that will come, inevitably as humans, that God would be with us. I remember 74, one of the best crops I'd ever seen in my life. It was one of those beautiful, our land in that flat gumbo quarter has a beautiful burn, which is a good price in those days. But coming home, you see, after it had hailed. And I was ready to cry. But my dad, you see,